So one thing I'll do right now, and I'm just going to hand out some gifts to you. This hasn't worked out too well in the past, as some of you know who've been at my workshops. Last year at the Alchemy Conference, I had ordered 50, trying to think of the Indian name for them, but they were fragrantes, that's it, I'm sorry. They were fragrantes, they're little stones made by Indian alchemists. They have a rose, real strong, pungent rose odor to them, and they have alchemical symbols all around the outside, and they're called fragrante because they're very, have a very strong odor that help you in meditation. So they hold these fragrantes during meditation, feel the symbols, alchemical symbols on them, and that helps them through their meditation. So I'd ordered 50 of these, and I'd gotten instead 50 flagrantes. These are 9-tailed whips that flagellants use to beat themselves into submission, I guess. But this conference was in Las Vegas, so everybody, I gave them out anyway, and I said they're alchemical because do the calcination, beat yourself down. But the people in the workshop then, all through the conference, would pull a whip out of their purse and say, hi Dennis, and have these, and everybody around them thinks I was some kind of I don't know what. But there's a lot of different uses for those whips, I think. Today, the right thing came, though, so don't be afraid. These are alchemical crucibles, and they're heavy. If I could get some help, maybe we could just pass these out. Hope I have enough here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
They're very heavy. Yeah, just grab a bunch of them. And what these are, they're both cauldrons and iron crucibles. They stand on a tripod, and the triad or tripod is extremely significant in alchemy. By the end of this workshop, you'll understand exactly what each one of those legs symbolize in alchemy and how they apply to the different operations of alchemy. A lot of alchemists use this as kind of a meditation chamber. You can burn incense in it and things like that to help meditation. You can also do what's called a calcination exercise, and you'll understand that in a minute. But you could put a slip of paper written on it, something that's blocking you, something that's in your personality or even in your environment or your life. Just write it down on a piece of paper and meditate on it, and then burn it up and light it on fire, let it burn to ashes, and you save those ashes. And you save those ashes in water, in a bottle of water, to remind you that this problem has been resolved. And it's a very unconscious thing. It starts out with a lot of focused intent, and it becomes an unconscious reminder whenever you see this little vial of ashes of what it was you wanted to destroy or get out of your way. So it's a little ritual that's done in some types of spiritual alchemy cultures. Indian alchemists do this. Some of the Taoist alchemists do it. And it's a useful exercise, I think, because we want to work with both conscious and unconscious energies in alchemy. The phrase that's going to guide us through the whole operations of alchemy, the whole process of transformation, is solve et coagula. It's a Latin phrase in alchemy. S-O-L-V-E-E-T, coagula, C-O-A-G-U-L-A. It sums up the whole process of alchemy. It's called the formula of the stone. The first solve means to dissolve or to break things down to their previous level before they were constructed or became salted, as they say in alchemy. And coagula is the coagulation or the creation of a new substance, a new level of being, a new vibration, a new energy based on what's been dissolved. So alchemists, when they burn something, when they dissolve something, they never throw it away, because in the ashes or in the dissolved liquid is the essence of what they're seeking. They've gotten rid of all the dross and all the extraneous substances, and what's left is what they're interested in. So they'll save the ashes, and they'll save the dregs, and they'll save all the ugly looking stuff that we, in a psychological level, experience as negative energies or something like that. They work with the energies in such a way that they try to transform it from the energetic essence of what it is. We work under this code of solve et coagula on all operations, even in the practical laboratory. That's how you sum up all the operations of alchemy. The first step is to break it down to the essence of what we're talking about. And the second step is to make it reborn, have rebirth of of that essence on a new level of purity and vibration. And the whole phrase is solve corpora et coagulata spiritus. And it means dissolve the body, dissolve what you're working with, dissolve the salted material thing, and coagulate the spirit, which in alchemy is the same as energy. And you want to coagulate the energy into the next perfected phase. In other words, energy is the pure essence of what you're trying to talk about. There's a pure essence of every chemical, every metal, and it's the energy, or what psychologists would call the archetypal presence of that substance. You have an archetypal presence. You have a basic essence that are called in many cultures soul. And in personal alchemy, you're working with the soul and all the obligations and complications that come with soul. Spirit in alchemy is very different. It's our intention, it's our goals, it's our desire to be transformed, it's the energetic presence, whereas soul is more like the material presence or the salt that we're working with. So soul and spirit in alchemy have very distinct definitions. They'll talk about the soul of a plant and the spirit of a plant, the soul being its oil and the spirit being its alcohol, and work with the plant kingdom like that. In humans, it would be what we traditionally think of as soul and spirit, and dividing it into those two essences. Once those essences are purified, they're brought back together so that their energies can create a new birth of a new substance, a new compound, a new spiritual level, a new embodiment of some type. That's the whole thing, solve et coagula. So we'll take a visual tour here. These principles are all summarized very succinctly in the Emerald Tablet, which is an ancient document from Egypt. There's a lot of myth and tradition about it that has fallen from the sky. And the idea is that it came from some higher level into our society. And you'll find more in the Emerald Tablet in the book there. Every alchemist had a copy of the Emerald Tablet. Isaac Newton, Roger Bacon, all alchemists, many of them had it hanging on their laboratory walls, and they consulted the secret formula that was in it. And this, what we're going to talk about today, these operations, are based on the Emerald Tablet and date back all the way to before Egypt was even, before the Second Dynasty. The idea of the Emerald Tablet is that there is an above and a below, that we are in the below. We are separated from our essence, from our energetic essence. Above is the world of angelic energies and archetypal principles and pure energies, pure divine principles that are impregnate through light into the darkness of matter. And that is how we evolve into our duality. So there's a vertical axis of reality, above and below, energetic, spiritual energy and matter. And then there is a horizontal axis on our level that we're like trapped in a duality on this level, and that's what keeps us here. This duality and this tugging between soul and spirit, king and queen that you often see in alchemy as symbols of this horizontal duality. It's like left and right, rational, irrational. Any polarity that you can think of is on this horizontal axis, where positive and negative oppose each other. And the energy, and just like in physics, it's when you bring these two opposing principles together, if it's possible, because they naturally repulse one another. If you can bring them together, you have a nuclear reaction. You have an exception to nature, if you will. That nature wants to keep us trapped in duality. The alchemist's goal is to bring us together back in one point. Not only bring the horizontal axis together at one point, but to bring the above and below together at one point. So that where they meet in the middle, that dot or bindu or monad, or whatever you want to call it, at the center of that cross of existence, that's where the alchemist wants to be. So the alchemist, and that implies something that is quite striking actually. The alchemist does not want to be in heaven. The alchemist does not want to be on earth. He wants to be between, balanced in the middle, where he has access to all realms. So that is not a teaching of the church. That is, the church and many religions say you have to live your life in the above, even though you're trapped here. You have to think only of the above and what's going to happen, and you don't mind dying for the above, and that kind of mentality evolves over time. But the alchemists were very practical in the world. They said, go to the above, bring down the energy into the creative world, and create something new there. Don't stay above, don't be spiritual all your life, don't be material all your life. Be between, where all these things come in balance. So you'll see as we talk about the operations that is part of the goals of the alchemist. Above and below are depicted in a lot of different ways in alchemical drawings, but it's always about a split between two realms, a spiritual energetic realm with archetypes and a material realm that's existing and physical in nature. A lot of times it's very subtle. We have this picture, which was actually in some Catholic texts at the time, that is an old alchemical drawing. And what it symbolizes to the church, of course, is the deification and proper burial of the dead. In alchemy, this is a symbol of the calcination process. You see a skull and, you see a skull and bones is always calcination, because that's what calcination means. It literally means bones or white material. Lots of bones. The old part is dead. This is the solve, dissolve or kill what is, or destroy what is impure, and bury it or burn it, get it out of the way. And here, very subtly, is a cross pointing to the above, drawn into this, which any alchemist would immediately recognize as a symbol that there's a process going on. Arrows pointing up, fingers pointing up, Hermes Trismegistus pointing up and down, bringing together the above and below. You'll see him pictured like that. Things pointing above are always about, now's the next step in this operation, which is actually a calcination process in the lab with the metals. The next step here is to take it to a higher level, to purify it, in other words, and work with the energies on that level. So in alchemical drawings, you see all this symbolism that is really subtle. Part of it was to get around authoritative and dogmatic structures in their world, but the other part was to convey things that are very wordy and very hard to convey in normal language, and it's kind of a meditative drawing. All these are meditative drawings that you try to absorb the meaning in it without words, because the alchemists thought that when you have a thought, that is a material thing, not a spiritual or mental thing like we think. As soon as you have a thought, the energy is coalesced or coagulated into that thought. And it's what the alchemists would consider salt, because salt was their word for compounds or anything physical in the world. So it's the energy before the thought that the alchemists tried to work with. And that's a wordless realm that you can reach in meditation. And many alchemical techniques, East and West, were about reaching that thoughtless place where you were there before the thought was formed, and you moved with the energy before the thought was even crystallized. It's a little complicated, but when you hear the word thought, it's a thing. It's already created. even though it's on a mental level. It's already created. It's not being formed. In fact, in the dissolution process on the psychological level, they believe that the salt in tears was actually dissolved thoughts. That because the tears were salty, that was the thoughts breaking down and through some emotional process, which is part of the dissolution process. Pardon?
The body that he's holding actually has a double axis, just like you were describing.
Absolutely. Up there.
On the body.
And on here. And you'll look for that everywhere. That's another sign of the double axis, the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. This is a drawing called the Tabula Smaragdina. It's Latin for emerald tablet. This drawing is one of the few drawings where the alchemists had all their symbols there. And it's a meditative mandala in alchemy. We kind of focus our attention, like all mandalas, on the center there of that circle and quietly meditate and try to absorb all these images in here. It's said that every image in alchemy is in this drawing somewhere. We see a definite distinction between above and below, between energy and matter on the vertical axis of reality. And we also see below how it's split into two different opposing, or the duality I was speaking of. The dark side, the feminine side, not in a derogatory sense in any way, but just that these are the dark powers, the unconscious powers, the lunar powers. On the other side, the pompous king with all his prancing about and dogma and ideas like that. So down below here, the operation is to bring together these two opposing ways of thought we have, the two opposing consciousness of intuitive feminine knowledge, Gnostic, if you will, and that opposed to the masculine, logical, visible type consciousness, has to see things. And you bring those together, and it produces a state of higher intuition, or gnosis, if you will, shown here by the alchemist. Black and white coming together, stars over him. Stars in alchemy symbolize the higher coagulation. In other words, the higher process. Stars are always very, very pure energy. And they talk about stellar or astral in alchemy is about these energies purified to the ultimate level.
Is there a specific number of angels in the alchemical construct? And also, could you say again what the positive masculine, if we call the feminine Gnostic, what would be the word on the masculine?
I think a better way to describe it, probably, a lot of writers describe the feminine as Gnostic. I think the feminine is more the feeling type of consciousness, and the masculine is more the thinking type consciousness. And what's between is what I would call Gnostic, or intuition, bring them together. Because when you're in a state of intuition, when you're in a state of knowing without having to explain why you're knowing, that is the alchemical stone. That is really the beginning of what's called the Philosopher's Stone. That state of consciousness allows you to penetrate the mysteries. And that's the goal, to get there. You can't do it just from the feminine way. You're chained to these clouds of unknowing. The masculine way is changed to these clouds of unknowing. They can't see the whole picture. They can't see what's going on above. Only through this vertical axis right in the center here, and all these alchemical symbols around them going through the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, and the metals, all the way up to gold here, this gradual evolution in nature and in man. Only then can you penetrate this level where thought becomes reality, where the salt here becomes reality, where you project your own reality, if you will, where you become part of the experiment and change the experiment through your own consciousness or through your objective presence in the experiment.
So is there a sacred number connected with the angels?
Yeah, the angels are the Kabbalistic 22 angels, and they all represent the names of God, if you will. That's how angels are portrayed as energies, though. And this is also how the Egyptians portrayed them. The angels were netters, that they call them, or archetypal energies. They were seen as the faces of God, if you will, because we can't look at God head on. we experience the angels, we experience all the thousands of gods of Hinduism, we experience the monotheistic gods of the Abrahamic religions as one God, but that would be all these faces together. But we cannot view God. We cannot view the source without becoming absorbed into it in alchemy. That's why staying above in alchemy means you're being absorbed back into the universe to be recycled. And the alchemists want to go up there, learn these principles, and come back and change matter because they feel that that is what our duty is in the universe, from the Big Bang to the big whimper when it comes back. I mean, the idea is to create a spiritual reality that is beyond matter, that is on the next level of energetic presence. And we can see above here the lamb, the name of God in Hebrew, and the dove. And these are, you'll see sometimes Christian symbols like that to disguise the drawing, again, from the church. But basically, the dove in alchemy symbolizes the Holy Spirit or the salted presence. And the reason the dove, the symbol of peace, is that the energy is settled. The energy is now something material or salted. So actually, the dove in alchemy represents the Holy Ghost, the secret in matter. The next one is God or sulfur in alchemy. The reason they associate sulfur with God is that sulfur is fire, basically. I mean, you can light it. It's called brimstone. It'll burn from its own fire. It smells of sacred things, the sulfurous odors. So sulfur is very much a symbol of energy in alchemy. They didn't have a word for energy. So sulfur became their symbol. And it also represents the energetic presence of God. So sulfur is not quite energy in the modern terms because it's a kind of energy with an identity or some hidden presence, an intelligence, if you will, like intelligent fire. Or sulfuric acid is a good example of liquid fire that seems to have an intelligence when it breaks down the metals and seems to have a goal behind it. And that is the evolutionary principle of God. And the lamb, the sacrificial lamb, is Mercury in alchemy. Mercury is a very strange substance, and we'll talk more about it a little later, but Mercury has this two-faced, dualistic property. It can be good, bad, powerful, weak. It can become anything. Mercury can become any metal. It was the seed of the metals, the alchemists believed. And Mercury can become anything within us. It's very connected to the idea of first matter in alchemy. So Mercury is very important. We'll talk about that later. In modern physics, Mercury is light. And light, too, is very much a mystery in modern physics. It has this dualistic property of being part wave and part particle, depending on the observer. And that's very much a key to the what we call the signatures of Mercury, that it takes on, it's very connected to consciousness. So it's that light of our own consciousness, if you will. So Mercury's light, sulfur's energy, and the dove is, salt is matter or mass in modern physics. So right there, the alchemists presaged or found a deep intuition of what the universal formula of the whole universe is. E equals mc squared. Energy is matter through light, or light into matter. And in fact, if that little c in E equals mc squared stood for consciousness, that would be precisely an alchemical formula. So that's really the only difference between alchemical thinking, is that light and consciousness is not so much a force in nature in modern physics, although it's certainly becoming that in quantum physics. Very complicated drawing. Fire and water coming together, the elements shown here below. One key Hermetic mystery that's only revealed in the initiatic teachings at a higher level, and that very much upset the church and dogmatic ideology, was that you'll see two suns here, all right? There's a sun behind the sun. You see the rays up above here. And then there's this central sun. The idea here is that there is a presence in the universe that is unknowable. That would be this greater sun, sometimes called the black sun or the sun behind the sun. It is that original wherever it came from, big bang burst of energy, light, and intent that made our universe. We know nothing about it, and I believe we can never know anything about it. It's not a directly experienceable thing, and that's what the alchemists believe. This sun behind the sun projected its purpose, its intent, into a second sun. And this is still a spiritual entity. The alchemists called it mind the maker. And that's why all these little identities are in here. These angels represent archetypal projections into reality that made all the different types of metals and all the different kinds of matter, all the different types of personalities. Every feeling you've ever had, everything in the universe came from this mind the maker. But the idea was that mind the maker is like a program that the universe is in. It's more like the engine that drives the universe. So God is not really present in the universe in the alchemical sense, not like it is in the church, that God knows everything you do and that God judges everything you do. God just doesn't have time for that in alchemy. It's the idea that there is this totally beyond thought and grasping spiritual energy in the universe that gave birth to it and that gave us its projected thought. That thought is to perfect matter in the alchemical sense, to turn lead into gold, but also every piece of matter, spiritual and material, to perfect it and bring it to the next level of incarnation, which is really an energetic level. So it's a whole different dimension that we're talking about. The first matter in alchemy is where all this Big Bang, you can think of the Big Bang minutes after being born into the universe. It carries all types of chaotic energies going in all different directions. It contains all possibilities. It contains the archetypes that we see here with the mythical symbols indicating the different archetypes. All kinds of energy, dark and light and fire and water, all mixed into one. This is that first atom of creation that contained everything. And that is still within us. As above, so below. We have that signature within us, and it is carried in our unconscious. It is carried in our soul. And I know every one of you here knows what I'm talking about, because it's that part of you that is there. It's always reliable. It's that part you default to when you've lost everything, when there's a calamity in your life and you've been reduced or dissolved. It's that hard core that exists even after the nervous breakdowns, even after the addictions are cured. It's that essence, and sometimes it takes a negative experience, like a great illness, some type of calamity, to get in touch with that core essence that the alchemists talk about. But that first matter is in us too. Therefore, we have that possibility to tap into that universal, unformed, endless, infinite energy and use it. Use it within our bodies and use it within our environment. And the teachings of alchemy say that this secret seed, sometimes called the star in man, or the archeus, that Paracelsus named it, the most ancient thing we carry in us, archeus, that thing is there for everyone. And it's all just about getting all the crap out of the way and getting down to be in touch with that energy and knowing how to transform it. And there's a first matter in every piece of matter. There's a first matter of the metals. So the metals are being reduced to their first matter. And we are being reduced to our first matter in the natural alchemy of our lives. And it's this Ouroboros cycle, or this cycle of becoming and destroying, and that we're caught in through our astrological archetypes, through our temperaments, our personalities. We're just caught in this, and most of us, by the time we reach the span of our bodies, we're still caught in that cycle. In alchemy, they believe that there's a way to jump out of that cycle into a new body or a new incarnation or a new purification of the body. Very much talking about the human body, the matter of the thing, and living in that body, being incarnated in that body on a new level, and therefore being outside of time, which is the Ouroboros cycle. So that's why alchemists talk about elixirs of immortality and processes of long life, and because they really believed that it was possible to break out of this cycle. and tap into the first matter. The principle of alchemy, as I mentioned, is about working in the laboratory, both practical work, but also mental work and meditation work. Ora et labora is the alchemical Latin phrase. It means pray and meditate and work. Work in the world, but keep the meditative perspective. And that is the way the work is achieved. So you'll see much about that, doing it. Almost all the laboratory drawings have what the alchemists call the oratorium, a meditation chamber, usually with a shroud around it. Modern days, that might be an isolation tank, but it's a place within the laboratory, within the everyday world, where you first go here to purify your thoughts, to get that to that level on the vertical axis, to be able to manipulate and work with things on that level and bring it back into concrete reality. And then all these other principles, music and books and mathematics and science and chemistry, that's all part of the work in alchemy. Alchemy is one of the few disciplines that combine both religion and science. And that's really how things split off into. A lot of New Age thought comes from the religious or spiritual part of alchemy. And of course, a lot of science comes from the scientific part of alchemy. But they combined it in one world, which we don't do today. Meditation, a big part of alchemy. Again, the meditation here, symbols of stars are, again, as I said, heavenly principles. There happen to be 7 here, so we know automatically in alchemy that we're talking about the 7 planets, or the 7 planetary archetypes, and the 7 metals, and that the stages of the meditations as they go through those different levels. And below, the personal horizontal axis here between soul and spirit, meditating and purifying those. Things with wings, naked things, in alchemy mean they've been purified. Things with clothes or claws or tails and things like that means they haven't been purified yet. Again, another meditative drawing. There's the planets, planetary symbols, sun and moon, working with the ascended essences here. Black crow in alchemy means the dark matter, the beginning of the work. It's kind of, crow's very symbolic in alchemy. A lot of different Indian tribal religions honor the crow too, as kind of a beginning of the work. The caw of the crow is like a call to awakening, to begin the work. And we get that call of the crow when things are going bad in our lives. Alchemy is not really for children, it's for adults who realize that they have to change and they have to do some type of work on themselves. And when that happens, it's not really always a good thing in this careers or health or wealth or something like that. It's always a crisis that initiates alchemy. Again, the idea is to follow the male following, the masculine energies following intuition. This is Sophia. In alchemy, another thing you'll hear a lot about, the alchemists were called philosophers. They were the first one to coin that term. Philosopher literally means in Latin, lovers of Sophia. Sophia is wisdom. And Sophia is the only thing we have in the world that gives us hope. If there wasn't the possibility of wisdom in the world, we'd have no salvation, really. We'd be stuck on some type of material level, some type of complex psychological processes. But there's the hope that we, at one point in our lives, will come to a higher level and achieve wisdom to get the higher picture and see what it's about. Now, we take that for granted that there's wisdom in the world, but it was very much a philosophical question to the alchemist. Why is there wisdom in the world? Why is there a possibility? Why don't we just stay apes? How did we evolve, and where did all this come from? And it had to be some type of gift from the gods that we had this possibility of even understanding ourselves and understanding the world as compared to animals and apes. Of course, I still think we're a bunch of apes driving cars. That's basically where we've evolved to today. Again, this is another picture of Sophia, the alchemist, paying attention now to wisdom, paying attention now to the speaking and words of Sophia in our minds, paying attention, taking a double look at things and trying to understand things, that, whether it be nature, ourselves, our relationships. Paying attention to her, he's bathing her. The two children here are very pure. That when they're children, they're very pure essences of spirit with the sun and soul with the moon. So these are the highest purified essences. Now that they've been achieved and they're at the lap of wisdom, the alchemists can burn up their books, throw them away. That's part of an alchemist routine too. Not to be tried or trapped to dogma or any type of, to be free mentally, to be free to change and follow wisdom and intuition wherever it leads. And so that's a very hard thing for us to do in our careers, in our environment, in our families. We get stuck in these routines and habits that we have to break out of, and we don't do that until we see wisdom or meet wisdom about what we're trapped in and understanding of our environment and the energies that are going on in our lives. Signatures are a big part of alchemy, and this comes from the idea of as above, so below. Alchemists look for signatures everywhere. They believe that just like that one mind projected its reality into our world, it left little signatures. In other words, every created thing has the signature of its creator. And that means all of us have the signatures of our parents and teachers, everybody that went into our creation, every book we've read. You can find those signatures in people. And you can find the signatures of how people evolved in their own lives by understanding and looking for the signatures. And it's kind of an objective thing to look for the signatures in a person. You have to evaluate the person sometimes from first impressions, and especially where there's passion and love involved, because that will sometimes cloud the issue. And I don't mean to be talking like anti-relationship or anything, but as we know, people get into bad relationships, and it's all because they don't take the time to really understand what the signatures of that person are. And we all know them. We just need to get in touch with the wisdom part of us and take a step back, if you will. And many of us, if we had seen the signatures of individuals, we wouldn't have pursued relationships. But you can see the signatures of people on a bus riding through the city. You can see people's signatures or essences if you learn how to look for them. And that's how the alchemists were in nature. They look for the signatures of plants and animals, the signatures of situations, the signatures of the metal, which are its characteristics, its potential, and its existing or its manifested presence. Now, there's always hope that something will change, and the signatures can change in alchemy. But you want to at least know the signatures of what you're working with or trying to be in a relationship with. Processes in alchemy, anything like this, was talking about these steps we're talking about. Here's the elements here in alchemy are air, which is the symbol for fire, with a horizontal line through it, meaning that fire is on the vertical axis and air is on the horizontal axis. Air is in our world, and that's another reason that air and spirit and that type of purified energy of breath is there for us. It's an element there for us to transform and use in our transformations. And this symbol, downward pointing triangle, is water in alchemy, which is feelings and movement and that type of defaulting type sense or passive work. And that's a downward pointing triangle. But these two, fire and water, form the basic operations of alchemy on that vertical axis. That's why fire and water are so important in alchemy. And their union, if you take that water sign and put it right over the fire sign, that is the sign of Salamander or the sign of the Philosopher's Stone. In other words, bringing together fire and water, like we were talking about, the two opposites on that horizontal level, creates the stone, which is that access to the next level of incarnation. And then earth is the downward pointing triangle with a horizontal axis. In other words, earth is like condensed water. Water is more of a spiritual thing, whereas earth is being material and on the horizontal plane of existence. This evolved into a formula, as I said, over the years, sometimes called the Emerald Formula. But it consists of these stages of, and I'm using the alchemical terms here. My publishers really hate this when I use more than two-syllable words, but these are the words used by the alchemist, and I'm not going to make up new ones that are less informative. You can read alchemical text and see these words and know exactly what they're talking about. Calcination is the fire operation, the first step in alchemy. It's about burning up, and it uses fire, the element of fire in the work on all the levels. Dissolution is the water operation in alchemy, and it uses water and watery processes, dissolving things, acids, breaking things down like that way. And that these two operations, calcination and dissolution, are like the first necessary steps in alchemy. They're called the black phase or the negrito, because the work here is long and arduous and working with a lot of muck in the psychological sense. A lot of complexes and habitual and addictive behaviors come up, and you have to look at those. So it's a lot of the dregs of yourself and what you're working with that you have to try to purify. But first you have to know they're there, and you have to release those essences and understand them. And as the purification proceeds, we have the operations of separation and conjunction, which is called the white phase, or the albedo in alchemy, where we're reaching a more purified state, where we're coming closer to the light. And separation is basically, you've got these essences now dissolved and free, essences of soul and spirit, or whatever opposing things you feel in your own personality or in the laboratory. And you've got them separated now and purified. The next step is conjunction, is bringing together these two essences in a new birth. At this stage, it's called the child of the philosophers. And it could be a new alloy of a metal. It could be a new compound from other compounds. It could be just a new personality or a new way of looking at the world, something you incorporate into yourself. So separation is like filtering and picking out parts in the chemical experiment, and that's the same thing in us. It's filtering out, knowing ourselves and filtering out what we don't want there, what's in the way. Conjunction is in the laboratory, it's fusing things under heat, it's bringing them together so that they combine into a new self. It's the precipitate forming, something new being born from these two opposites. In us, it's some alchemists call it the over-self, or a new self, the new person, the new man. Many traditions have different names for it. But it's basically that matured self that has access to wisdom, that is a new and confident conjunction in the world of our personality. Fermentation, distillation, coagulation, these are all parts of the red phase of alchemy. We're going to talk about these tomorrow, so they're part of the red phase, which is the empowerment phase, the coagulation phase, where we have projection and intent in the universe, and we'll go into those tomorrow. These are how the alchemical symbols that some of the alchemists use to describe these in elemental terms and terms of the planets, terms of the actual operations in the laboratory. Again, this is a summary of these processes on the psychological level. And just real quick, we're going to run through some of these operations and talk about how they are. Calcination symbols always have fire in them in alchemical prints. The salamander is thought to live in the fire in alchemy. In other words, we have to want to be in the fire. We have to want to be burned. Actually, if you're ever around a bonfire in the forest or something, and you'll see little lizards scurrying out from underneath the logs, actually are attracted to the heat underneath the fire. And I think some alchemists saw that one day and believed that the salamanders and lizards actually lived in the fire. But it's really a great symbol for this process where you have to become immersed in fire. All kinds of fiery symbols with a living presence. Here's another salamander The salamander usually has stars on its back going up its spinal cord, referring to the evolution of the energy or the life force as purified energetic presence, is what we call the chakras. Again, soul, because she's naked, because she's a woman, being thrown into the fire by the alchemist. Usually a sword means the separation phase because you're cutting up things and separating them. So in the phase of separation, it's a masculine type, very Martian, and Mars is associated with this, and iron is associated with this stage, where you take soul and what your own essence is and throw them into the fire to purify it even more. Again, the fire and the stages of dissolution, calcination, dissolution, the body that survived the fire is being cut apart now. The dissolution phase is normally scenes of water. And again, there are two fish swimming in our sea, and those fish are soul and spirit, and everything else that we would think of as soul and spirit, lead and tin and all the silver and gold, all the dualities we have in our world, all the different types of energies that seem to be opposing us. Within those opposing energies are the source of our transformative work. And the king now is naked. That means he's been purified, so we have spirit now. It's a masculine naked figure representing spirit or energy. He's been cleansed in the waters of dissolution, which are like breaking down into unconscious energies, breaking down into feelings, letting feelings flow, because feelings are like energy, emotions in the body. Again, this idea of purification, coming up out of the quagmire and being purified onto a new level. That's the operations of separation. Again, the dragons and swordsmen fighting dragons is another symbol. Volcanoes, fire from underneath the earth, and the lion being a symbol of sulfur because of its color, and because it's the king or the higher identity in nature. Picking out things, the filtration process and dissolution. This is a dissolution drawing. In other words, if the alchemist was working on something in the laboratory, he would know that at this stage, he would have to use filtration or have to use some type of operation to pick out what he wants to save out of the experiment. And also on the personal level or the psychological level, it's picking out those parts that you want to save and empower. Lots of geometrical drawings at this stage because it's very logical. You want to see what's wrong. You want to go in there and understand from an objective viewpoint what's going on. So the alchemist will make all kinds, you'll see hundreds, literally hundreds of these type of geometrical drawings, and this is all part of separation. We are trying to get a mental handle on it, and it takes kind of a masculine type consciousness to do that. But it's necessary in everyone to pass through that phase to get into that type of alchemical state, to go through that. Lots of drawings of dissolution process and separation contain symbols which are really hard to figure out for most people. But the frog is like the default energy level, the default life force on the planet. You know, a lot of times scientists look for the health of frogs to determine what the environment is like. So that's like the lowest life form in you, the lowest point, when you're totally no energy left and there's nothing but that little spark that keeps your heart going and keeps you in the world, that keeps you going to work. When you're at that very low state, and that's where the separation starts, you have to go down into this darkness and retrieve that essence and bring it out of the solution. So you'll see these ascending doves, which means this is something where you ascend the energy or pull it out of something. And that also has lab significance too. Lots of drawings like this, and they really symbolize the alchemist's interior state during meditation. So they're very hard to figure out. This particular sequence of alchemical symbols is still being written about by philosophers and psychologists because it's talking about feelings that you get in meditation. In other words, all those intimations, those little feelings you get throughout your life that you think no one cares about, the alchemists cared very much about. They thought that they were real things. Our emotions, when we have fear, that's a real thing. That's an ingredient in us. When we have love, that's an ingredient. When we are nervous and running off nervous energy or coming from our head or our heart from different levels, that type of feeling, it was very subtle to understand because they're talking about meditative states and very few traditions actually talk about the feelings you have during meditation and what they feel like. And there's just a lot of fodder here for research into meditative states, but they're very hard to understand because it's like an individual talking about his own inner states. But you can see that in a lot of notebooks that people take, especially drawings that they make in different states of mind. Again, the point is that the alchemists believed that these feelings we're having in meditation, and these feelings we're having throughout the day, as a matter of fact, although they're all chaotic, but in meditation especially, when we feel movement in our body, that's something important. That's a movement of energy, and there must be they have visions or colors associated with that. And that specific feeling, trying to get down to what that is very hard. And so it's almost an individual thing. But if you work like that, if you can identify these feelings that you've been taught to take for granted, these emotions you're having, or these feelings of a good feeling in your liver, or during meditation, or all the chakra type energies, if you pay attention to those, you'll see and actually feel some of the ways all this evolved. I mean, how tin feels, how lead feels, and how gold feels in different levels.
On the side, there's the earth and the fire, and then is the next one air and then water? I can't quite.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard to
So the
understand.
water.
Earth, fire. It's saying it's raising from the earth. So in a meditative experience, raising from the body, this is a body feeling we're talking about, an energetic feeling, and it's moving up through the coagulations now. In other words, it's something coming to the surface. It's becoming more identifiable, more felt, if you will. Something going in from earth and floating up through the fire, which is the meditation experience itself, or the focusing of intent, or attention rather, on that level that brings these things up. Again, different levels. I don't want to, this is such subtle stuff. I just want to make you aware of how every little feeling was something in the experiment of personal transformation to the alchemist. And I think that's something we're missing. You know, I think meditation is very much oversimplified, and it's very difficult to teach and talk about. But if you pay attention to your inner state and take each thing you're feeling, not necessarily thinking, you know, don't trust your thoughts because they're just kind of habitual. Sometimes they're salted things. And that's why the objective of meditation in a lot of cultures is to stop thought, to end this cycle. And of course, that's very hard to do. I don't have time for a story, but I'm going to tell you one anyway.
Stay in the present.
Yeah, the present moment. That's very important. The very present moment, not the future, not the past, because neither one are real. It's the present moment where all this work is done. That's a good point in meditation, to get to that level, where the present level of things coming up.
Has the water that comes down out of above, the water comes down, has it put the fire into another state there?
Yeah, this is still the fire level, but it's now been condensed or into clouds because something is coming down from above.
Yeah.
Here's the earth, you're in your body, but the next phase that this person is feeling is that there's some type of grace coming down, you know? And that dulls the fire then, that dulls that fire inside us. About meditation, I'd meditated many, many years. I tried many different traditions. I was the first one to own an isolation tank and Sacramento, California, which was quite, probably the only one still. And I was into a lot of different traditions, but one I got deeply into was Transcendental Meditation. Some of you probably heard this story, but in Transcendental Meditation, which is very popular for a while, the whole idea is to stop thinking and to end thought. And so there's all kinds of techniques. One is mantra, you know, where you say a word or a phrase over and over again until you totally bore your brain to death, and it gives up thinking, and you're at that state after many hours. And there's and the focus is on stopping thought. It doesn't say anything after that. You know, you just want a blank mind. That's the goal of Transcendental Meditation. So one weekend I was home alone, and I determined to sit in the middle of the living room. Nobody was home for the weekend, and I was going to sit there like Buddha until I achieved this Transcendental Meditation state, and didn't care how long it took. So I really got into a deep meditation, 6-7 hours sitting there on the floor, and I got into a point where the thoughts were pretty much slowing down, but it was also a point when I was frozen in my body. I mean, the senses leave when you go deeper into deeper meditation. First sound that leaves, you can't hear anything, and then finally taste at the end, and the last one to go is odor. So you're like in a catatonic state where your body is just sitting there. It's totally supporting itself. You can't move, basically, without a lot of effort. And that is very, very deep delta type meditation. And I was in that state and thought that, okay, this is it. I'm going somewhere. And I got a little nervous then, or I had a thought that I'm paralyzed and I can't come out of this. And I was paralyzed. I couldn't. I thought to move my arm, I thought to move my leg. I couldn't. And I was totally frozen in this position. That was terrifying. And so in meditation, they teach you that the only thing you have access to in meditation, the only outside thing, the only thing you have control over in meditation is breath. And as you change your breath, you change your meditative state. So in order to come up out of this deep catatonic state I was in, I started breathing faster and faster. Just increased my breath and going into what's called the fire breath. And that was working very much so. And I started feeling my skin, feeling like I was in a body again, and I was doing my fire breath, you know, like that to come out of this. And then, like projected right in front of me, was my own breath coming back at me. I could hear, and then I heard the other. It was like, and I'm thinking, I'm projecting my astral body. It's there, and all I need to do is open my eyes, and I'll see this revelation of what my true self looks like. And because we were so in sync, and it really felt like that. So I kept breathing, but I couldn't open my eyes, so I did the fire breath more and more, and I really struggled, and I got my eyes open and popped them open, and there, sitting right in front of me, was my old English sheepdog, who was sitting there trying to figure out what I was doing. I swear, that's a true story. And I never practiced Transcendental Meditation again. I never thought to stop my thoughts, because that dog was right where I wanted to be. I looked in his brown eyes, and there wasn't a thought there. And that's where that type of tradition was taking you. I just didn't understand. I couldn't do that kind of meditation anymore. Then I realized that alchemical meditations, they never describe anything like that in their text about how to do an alchemical meditation. Alchemical meditations are extremely active. You're going down into this state, but there's work to do. So you try to have a goal without having a thought. In other words, you try to have a diffuse goal of what you want out of the meditation, whether it's to look inside yourself or to project some type of new incarnation. And it's very, very diffuse and passive, but it's still not that state where you just want to blank out. It's a state of work to be done. And it's very subtle work. But the alchemists believe that this is where a lot of the work had to be done, because they believed consciousness was a force in nature, and purifying consciousness was part of the puzzle of becoming something new. Lots of alchemical drawings will show two different types of situations, and these are all about soul and spirit. So it's about separating these essences, soul and spirit. A snail on the ground who stays below, a bird in a tree up above, and the idea is to separate them out into their essences. Sometimes you'll see a frog chained to an eagle in weird drawings like that. That means that we're trying to bring these two parts, your body, your mind, and spirit, all together as one. And a lot of times you'll see a wolf and a dog fighting, wolf being soul, or these animal instincts, the wild part of us, and a dog being a domesticated. It's white here, showing that it is a domesticated or slightly purified animal essence. And they're arguing or fighting, and that's the first phase before they come together. A lot of times the unicorn is a symbol of the spiritized or purified spiritual energies, which would be like our mental capacities, our rational side. And the red deer or the stag of the forest, also Diana in myth, which is the purified soul forces coming together in a peaceful environment. So separation brings out these opposing essences and makes them come together as one in a new mediating principle. Again, soul and spirit now naked and purified, so we're moving into the next phase. And this is a very physical phase in alchemy, about these two opposing principles coming together in conjunction, coming together in a peaceful way under the alchemist's control. And again, when you get to this level, there's a deeper aspect of soul and spirit that only the alchemist really seemed to know about, was that the moon, or the lunar presence within us, our soul, is trapped in matter, or the dark, whereas the sun, the spirit, the energetic part of us, is not as much opposite to it as a reflection of itself. In other words, the sun and the moon are the same thing. The moon is a reflection of the sun's light. And on the higher spiritual level, the moon and the sun really are the same. So they can come together, and they can come together as one, both on a cosmic level, individually, and in the experiment. The only thing you have to get out of the way is the earth, in this case, which is a symbol of all the material you want to get rid of. You want to get rid of that thing that divides these pure essences all the time, which in a chemical experiment are the dregs and things that come up when you put something in a fire or dissolve it. Again, kind of a straightforward depiction of what we're talking about. A lot of modern alchemists, you'll see them talk about these principles in terms of things we can operate and use in a more rational way, tied to more metaphors in the current language, like software of transcendence. I've seen it many times. But it's basically soul and spirit again. They might call it attention and intention. They might call it feelings and thoughts. Feelings being the energies here from soul are interpretive from memories, and decisive from desires. In other words, our desires make up our mind a lot of times. And thoughts from induction, generalizations of what we've gone through, or from deduction and logic. So you'll see a lot of these terms used in modern traditions, like polarity therapy and a lot of different ideas, but they're basically talking about the same thing the alchemists were talking about: sun and moon, lead and gold. Conjunction operation, we have those same type of interior drawings. All the levels of alchemy have these type of interior drawings that are talking about feelings in meditation, and they're always enclosed in a sealed vessel. That's how you'll know that they're talking about meditation usually. It's a hermetically sealed vessel. In other words, you're in your mind, your senses are cut off, you're just working inside. And that hermetically sealed term even comes from alchemy. It's plugging it up so no outside influences get in, and you're just doing the work inside. And the idea, again, bring these two opposing essences together, so the birth of the child of the philosopher, or a new state, a new personality, a new metal, whatever we're talking about, from the chaos, which is the first matter, indicated here below in this lapis lazuli gemstones, and moving up into the coelom of the philosophers, or the higher vessel of transformation. These are all places in the body, and we'll talk about them tomorrow as we get more into meditations, exactly how this process goes on in the body and where we focus attention. We'll do a long meditation here on circulation of the light, which is this process. Again, working below and having the operations take place above. The idea of projecting the purified essences up into the light, up into the highest purified way of consciousness, which is light. Bringing them together as opposing essences, sun and moon, training and overpowering the powers of the chaos within us, which are always dragons, and creating this new state, this circular state, perfected state, the stone. And once you do that, once you create that stone or quintessence energy, once you go beyond the elements and create something that's never been there before, the fifth element, which is the life force, the purified life force, or the mercurial presence we'll talk about tomorrow, Sunday. That essence can conquer all the elements. That quintessence that you've created during the conjunction, that bringing together of opposites, can control and beat down all the elements, no matter what they're doing in your body. Age, here's fire, water, air, and earth. This conquers all in the body. So you start to use that quintessence, or that little child of the philosophers, or that little lesser stone, as they call it, to change the elements in your body and to control the elements in your body, the elements of all our inner fire, of our metabolism, of the way we live in the world and the way we create in the world. And in the laboratory, the same thing, and in the spiritual level, the same thing. Again, the elements within our body, we have the phlegmatic, or the water level, the fire level of the choleric, the sanguine, which is air, and the melancholic, which is earth. With the fifth element, you start controlling these things. They no longer control you, and that is how it works to transform the body, to transform a mineral, to transform a metal. That's the same process. Okay, I don't know if we have any time. What, are you next?
Closing, why don't you just wrap it up the last 5 minutes or so?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Any questions? I presented a lot to you, so I'll give you a date as it's all. Yeah.
On one of the slides, there was somebody who's been purified sat next to the river.
Next to the what?
Next to the water, there was somebody sat naked that's been purified on one of the slides. And I noticed that like the upper half of the body is very masculine and the lower half of the body is very feminine. Is that intentional?
Yeah. Yeah, when he's mentioning that in one of the drawings it showed a figure half male and half female, from above and below, male above and female below. Let's talk about the horizontal level. The bringing together of physical masculine and feminine characteristics is the androgen, which is another, or the hermaphrodite, Hermes and Aphrodite coming together. And that's a physical thing in alchemy, that they look for that in the experiments and on the physical level. What you're talking about is the vertical level of reality, where the masculine energies are above and the feminine energies are below. That's a reversal of the normal operation, because you think of the passive energies above and the active energies below sometimes. So that means that in that person, or in that state of meditation, he has achieved conjunction on the vertical level. That's a whole different story. That's what we call the lesser conjunction, is this thing on the horizontal level. The greater conjunction is on the vertical level, and that's the end of the work. So the next phase for that is, it's saying that the next phase there is to project onto a whole new octave. We're talking 7 steps here. That the 8th step is a whole new octave, or vibration of energy, or creation. Any other question? Yeah.
I feel just a little confused about that, I don't know, three photos back there with the, you said the moon is trapped in darkness, and then the sun, is it trapped somehow too?
No.
And then there's reflected light, so I began to get this Wait a minute now. We have reflected light and an entrapment in darkness, which might be.
Yeah, that's a good question. She's talking about that drawing we saw with the moon in darkness and the earth between them and keeping the light from reaching the moon. The moon exists visually in the sky from reflected light. And that is how the alchemists saw matter itself, that matter is just light condensed. That is how physics sees it. You know, matter is energy condensed through light. And that's exactly how the alchemists thought of it. So the moon, the source of the moon is in the sun. And the source of matter is in energy. So energy above, matter below. And that's the projection. And the idea is not that the moon is in darkness, but it is the idea that the energy is trapped in matter, that the spirit is trapped in matter. And alchemy is about freeing that from matter and letting it come. And that's a very positive drawing in alchemy because it's saying that not only is that possible, but it's a universal principle. That they were saying what the quantum physicists believe, that energy is condensed matter, that they're really one and the same. And the intermediary is light. Any other questions? Just one more. All the way back.
What did if there were any correlations, what did a solar eclipse represent?
That represents the coming together. Eclipses were very symbolic, and you'll see sun and moon coming together a lot of times in alchemy.
Differentiation between a lunar or solar eclipse?
The action that would be taken, so that would be solar eclipse would be sun coming, or the solar spirit coming down into matter, and the lunar eclipse would be, it's that Ouroboros principle making the rounds there. And the idea is that the eclipse actually symbolizes that higher conjunction of the sun and moon coming together, gold and silver coming together. And the symbol for the stone is the sun and the moon next to each other in a kind of eclipse or conjunctive state. And actually there's a metal that has that same symbol. It's platinum, which was thought to be the ideal combination of gold and silver. And just watch 2001 if you really want to understand some of that symbolism, because whenever they show an eclipse in that film, it's a next stage in the alchemical process. The same 7 steps we're talking about here. On the internet, there's lots of papers describing the alchemical symbolism of the film 2001. I think it's a great film to watch to really get a feeling for this, because they'll show an eclipse and that means next stage. And you can follow it from calcination all the way to coagulation. Okay, we'll have to break. Thank you.
Everyone, let's all give our applause to them.
Thank you.